I know, I'm late. The Division 2 has already came out, but I still need to make sure that I got this video posted and toasted in the meantime. Cutting straight through the bullshit, the last 4 shields are not necessarily tough, but are still a hassle to deal with. In other words, RNG is going to be a contributing factor as to how you obtain certain gear and weapons. Basically, it's going to be a bitch. This could either take you a couple of days to perform or perhaps an eternity depending on how much you want to get this shit out of the way. And just a quick heads up, I will be doing these shields out of order in relation to how tough they may be. So let's go ahead and get this ball rolling.
Fuck you. Oh, fuck you, fuck you.
The Martial Shield requires you to collect all 30 exotic gear items, 6 consisting of armor and 24 consisting of weapons, while the Prime Shield requires you to obtain 3 full classified gear sets. As we're already aware, exotic items are considered to be the best of the best endgame gear that have a different set of abilities that allow for you to turn the tide against your opponents. Classified gear set pieces act in the same manner as their original gear set piece counterparts. The only difference, however, is that in addition to the regular bonuses that you gain from collecting a full set, you'll acquire even more benefits that will be a key point as to whether or not you'll survive the gruesome streets that is Manhattan, New York. In regards to the exotic gear, the best solution would be to go into World Tier 5 and start some trouble in the previous areas that's already been covered in the past shield guides. I say best, but really there are other solutions as to how you can obtain them. Considering the fact that you have to get your first exotic freebie after beating the main storyline, you'll have to work your ass off in order to get the other 29 as well as any other classified gear sets. One option is to complete your daily/weekly challenges that can easily be done in a day if you put your mind to it. Each package will contain some nice loot as well as some exotic gear items, and another option will be to buy specific weapons from the vendor located underneath the base of operations, which is the terminal. The same thing can be done for classified gear sets as there are caches that are available upon purchase. However, you will need Phoenix credits to buy them, so this will be a good opportunity to complete any other shields as they grant you 2,000 credits upon completing them. They're also expensive as shit, so good luck with that. DLC that's been covered in the previous episodes, including Survival, Resistance, and the Underground, are bound to be areas that you can help obtain your goal. For these activities in particular, you could always cheese the game and stay in the first world tier to make it easier upon yourself. That way, you won't have to work up as much of a sweat when you're trying to acquire certain items. The only downside to this is that should you complete any of these activities, the gear that you acquire hopefully may be at a low level, so just be sure that you know what you're doing and what you're looking for. Roaming around the city can also net you some gear, particularly in the form of named enemies. This is especially good in the west side period as named enemies are bound to drop exotic armor out of the blue completely, and completing certain past missions on the hardest difficulty will grant you certain items, in this case either Napalm Production or the Lincoln Event Center, as 2 of the exotic pieces are named after certain figures that you faced in the past. Grind them out and you should receive them or other exotic weapons that are usually hard to get. The last and probably the hardest way would be to complete the legendary missions. However, since this is also a shield requirement, mind you, we'll go over this a bit later since these types of missions are tiresome and stressful. One last thing to note is that global events are still a thing and happen every now and then, but then again, the only problem is that now that the second division is out, it's unclear as to whether or not they'll still happen. Only time will tell, I guess you could say. Remember that completing other shield requirements will grant you classified gear set pieces or exotic armor and weapons, so there's that. And with all that out of the way, you'll now watch me unpack over 20 of these sons of bitches because it's about time I unload some stuff. Chieftain Shield requires you to reach a gear score total of 290, and if we're being technical, the highest gear score total is 291, but it really doesn't make that much of a difference unless you want to perfect it. If I'm not mistaken, patch update 1.8 introduced the optimization station located at the terminal. This station allows for you to rework your gear and items and upgrade not only the base stats for them, but its overall gear score as well. From this process, you'll definitely see some improvements to your character and become a force to be reckoned with. Starting off, the highest gear score available for weapons, armor, and non-classified gear set pieces will be set at 286 max. Classified gear set pieces, excluding the holster, they'll be set at 293 max. The reason why I say this is due to the fact that the holsters, should they be optimized to the fullest, will reach a gear score total of 295 maximum. This is why most individuals nowadays are interested in collecting the classified version. As we've already discussed, classified gear set pieces will be much more beneficial in the long run. To start the optimization process, just simply select what you wish to upgrade. The cost for optimization will be 250,000 credits and 50 division tech for each time that you optimize an item. The best way to earn credits is to replay the main missions on the hardest difficulty, of course. Division tech, on the other hand, is usually much more strenuous to get. You can either complete your daily/weekly challenges, or you can go to the dark zone. One last thing to note is that should you want to recalibrate your gear, it'd be best to do it beforehand or not at all. I noticed that should you recalibrate your gear, there's a slight chance that your gear score can be affected and will either go up or down. So unless you want to reach the bare minimum, just skip it and you should be fine for the most part. And now for the last shield that we'll cover is the Fang Shield, the one that requires you to complete 7 legendary missions located across Manhattan. The one shield that will generate an enormous amount of stress depending on how you play around with. The one shield that will literally be hell on earth and will just probably be the end of your life, I guess you could say, or your humanity. Let me be frank and just go ahead and say that the legendary missions are not fun. They are the exact opposite of fun. It's like a combination of what hell is like and an aggressive pack of wolves chasing after you for the rest of eternity. This is why optimization over your gear is completely necessary, and even then, you're still going to have a hard time getting by as the enemy NPCs are ruthless as shit and will completely mop the floor of your dead corpse. So unless you want to completely demolish yourself in the process and tackle this alone, which is actually doable depending on what your loadout looks like, then you're going to want to pair up with a few individuals who know what they're doing for the most part, or at least think they know what they're doing for the most part. The 7 legendary missions consist of Warrengate Power Plant, Times Square Power Relay, Napalm Production Site, Grand Central Station, Madison Field Hospital, Amherst's apartment, and General Assembly. These missions act in the same manner, more or less, like their original counterparts. The only difference is that the enemies are on a completely different level, and if you're not careful, you will get put on your knees in about 2 to 3 shots. They can also one-tap you with a single melee attack, so that's something you should look forward to because that's fucking fun. Take note that named enemies are damn near invincible and will take a full team effort just to bring one of them down. Hunters will also make an appearance to make your division experience a living nightmare, particularly in the last 4 legendary missions. The best way to clear them all out of the way is to cheese it. Lure named enemies to a safe location one by one and get the drop of them from there. Rinse and repeat the process until only the hunter is the last one standing, or, a hunter and a named enemy in this case, because why not? They are extremely durable, like a goddamn brick wall that's melted together with titanium, so cooperation with your teammates is something you need to jump on board with. If all else fails, be a support. Supply your teammates with health regenerating abilities and back them up with certain gadgets that enemies are weak against. If and after you've made it through the horrific, gruesome events that have followed, be sure to collect your reward, as enemies, especially named ones and hunters, will drop some of that good shit. This usually consists of certain weapons granting unique perks or exotic gear / classified gear pieces that you will need to complete the other shield requirements. Teammates will usually drop some gear if they're not too interested in it, so be sure to grab whatever you can. After completing the mission, you will be rewarded with an exotic gear cache that you can stock up by completing the other legendary missions, so be sure to keep that in mind. Also come to find out that global events usually make legendary missions a bit easier, but not necessarily, because at the end of the day, they are still kind of tough and still kind of bullshit. But other than that, I hope you guys actually enjoyed my bullshit guide over this. Should the Division 2 happen to do this, I'll be more than happy to do another crafting guide series over that as well, since I have nothing better to do with my time. But until then, love you all and peace.